connected to our emotions and where we're coming from in a very emotional place. Because I always say Father, Sun, and Mother Moon, because the sun is that bright, loud, hot, fiery yang energy, and if you look into anything in duality, if you look into like yin and yang, or the feminine versus, and I use versus in a very loose term, I'll just say the feminine and the masculine, because we each have a feminine and a masculine side. And before I'm gonna say this in before somebody else says, we're not all men and women, and because it's not about genetics, it's not about genitalia, it's not about vagina or penis. It has nothing to do with that. We each have energetically a masculine and a feminine side, and you'll see it. Today you're seeing more of my feminine side. And when I am passionate and I am aggressive and I am fierce, that's my masculine side, and each side has its positives and each side has its negatives. And in many cases, of course, the positives and the negatives are very directly reflect the person who's seeing them or the person who's experiencing them based upon their own personal preferences or perspectives on things. For example, my aggression or my passion can be seen very negatively by people, but I think it's a very positive thing, because all I see, well, this is not all I see, I should rephrase that. A lot of what I've seen are very apathetic people who aren't willing to fight for anything or stand up for anything. Whereas, of course, on the same coin, I have met a lot of people, especially at the beginning of their mega awakenings, where they're having their huge consciousness awakenings, where their passion and their power and their fierceness, that's so positive. It is so positive. But yeah, I'm getting off track. But I think what I'm trying to say is that we each have a masculine side and a feminine side, and each of these sides has pros and cons. And we use them all the time, and like I was saying, I have my moments where I am very soft, I'm very yielding, I am quiet, I'm very patient, I'm very loving, and this is the positive feminine side. And then I have those times where I am passionate, I am aggressive, and I'm talking about positively aggressive, motivating, inspiring, loud-mouthed, and these are my positive masculine traits, and I'm sure you can think of many yourself. And then, of course, we have the negatives. The negative feminine traits would be deceptive, critical, self-doubting, self-loathing, loathing and doubting of others. And then the negative masculine traits would be anger, like rage, not like anger as a tool, but like rage, hatred, brashness, crudeness, rudeness, just very loud and belligerent and violent in verbally, so I look at the sun and the moon this exact way, because just like Mother Earth, these are living beings. And the sun would be that yang energy, that loud, hot, fiery, whereas the moon is that soft, yielding, quiet, like there's a great difference between the two, and I'm sure you've seen the great difference. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, right? And it's they're very, both of them are very beautiful in their own particular ways, and last night I saw a very yang moon, because the moon was the brightest I've ever seen it in a really long time, and my partner and I were at my parents' house, and we were looking through the telescope, and he saw a craft zip around the moon. So I was happy about that, because I'm always like, oh my God, did you see that? And he's like, no, I missed it. So it's always wonderful when he sees a craft or a ship of some kind and shares that experience with me. And in the past, he and I have seen them together, but I've seen much more. And now he saw one that I didn't see. So I was just like, okay, that's wicked. You're finally coming to that place where they're finally coming to you. They're being drawn to your energy. So that's always wonderful. But the moon last night was incredibly bright and blinding. We were looking at it through the telescope, and I was literally like, when I was getting back from the telescope, I was seeing my left eye was fine because I wasn't using it to look through, because my right eye is a little bit better than my left eye. And my right eye was just filled with this big dark blue light. And like, when you stare at the sun and you come away after a minute or whatever and you see like little speckles and stuff like that, it was way worse when sun gazing. It was way worse. And so I was like, oh my God, the moon is brighter right now than the sun ever is. And it was a really strange, but what's happening tonight is unfortunately not in US and Canada, we are going to be having a full lunar eclipse, but it's going to be basically South America and South Africa that gets to see it, and I believe Australia and New Zealand are going to see like the beginnings of it, and then the sun will be rising, so they'll miss the rest of it. But apparently we're not going to be able to see it here. I'm still going to go outside and pray that I get to see it, because that would be awesome. But yeah, so I think that had a lot to do with it, that, the moon was on its precipice of having, an energetic event, like a lunar eclipse. And so that was probably why she was so bright. Now, emotionally, the reason I was looking up the David Icke stuff, I believe I mentioned just a minute ago, is because I was looking up our emotions connected to the moon. And I find that, just like we are magnets, the same way that the sun is a magnet and our planet is a magnet and the moon is a magnet. Us, each individual, we are all magnets, because we carry all these energetic frequencies within us that draw us together or repel us. And I mean, I'm sure you've seen this in your own life, where you meet somebody or you get together with a family member. And I have a few family members that when I get together, I just want to be around them. I just want to be close to them physically. I just want to hug them, or I just want to touch them, or, have that closeness, because I feel magnetically attracted to that person. For some reason, their magnetic makeup, their frequency makeup coincides perfectly with mine, and it brings us closer together. On the same hand, you have family members, maybe like the one I was talking about earlier, who you're both magnets, but because your energetic frequency is very, very different from one another's, you repel one another. And there are also some cases, of course, where one of you has a specific energetic frequency and the other one has a specific frequency. And they're repelling you, but you are magnetically drawn to them, or vice versa. They are drawn to you, but you repel them. And this happens a lot. I'm sure you can see it in your own family. So this kind of takes me, I'm kind of in a kerfuffle today emotionally. And the last couple of days have been really, really hard for me. In a state of, it's harder for me to laugh, and it's harder for me to smile, and I don't want to like really touch anybody. I don't want that, because I view that a lot also as like when you touch somebody, when you hold hands with somebody, because there are chakras in the hands, you're sending energy to one another and you're receiving energy from one another. So I don't right now at this point, and my partner's amazing, and he's so patient and he's so thoughtful and awesome and kind. I have a hard time touching him because my frequency is so low right now. My emotions are so kerfuffled that I don't want that connection right now, because I'm trying to work out a bunch of shit, basically. But that's a positive thing, to have a little break and to kind of retreat to your own corner and try to figure things out. But at the same time, you realize that there's something quote unquote wrong happening. And I use that in quotes only because it ends up being a very positive experience. But our connection between the planets, and there's so much more. And actually, let me tell you this story, because it's short, but we're talking about a little bit about the planets and the energetic frequency, and in a sense, the gifts that we are given from each celestial body. A couple weeks ago, we were at the parents and we were looking through the telescope, and we had looked through like 2 stars, and you're basically, and it's beautiful. I mean, you're basic, even with the 10 mil, I'm trying to remember how many times the eyepiece is. And for any of you who know anything about telescopes, I probably don't even have to explain what that means. But each eyepiece comes with a millimeter size and an X size. And the X size represents the magnification. And then the millimeter size represents how big the little glass hole is for you to look through, basically. And we have this we have 2 eyepieces at home, a 25 millimeter and at the parents, I mean, a 25 millimeter and a 10 millimeter, but I couldn't tell you what times they were, except for the fact that the 10 millimeter gets in much closer, but it's much harder to look through because the tiny little glass circle is only 10 millimeters across, right? So I believe that's what it is, 10 or 20 millimeters. I don't know, because we got an 8-inch telescope, but it's easily, the top of the telescope is easily 16 inches across. So I think it's not talking so much about diameter as it is radius. So it could be the same thing with eyepieces. But anyway, we were looking through at all these stars, and they're beautiful to look at. If you have a telescope or a good pair of binoculars, I highly recommend that you give the stars a look on a clear night, because you will see some incredible things, and what you tend to look at when you just see a star that's like, a rolling combustible gas ball, basically, is you'll see colors and you'll see lights, and it's almost like a firework in the sky sort of thing, but it doesn't explode the way a firework does into like patterns. It's basically one, if you're looking at a star, it's basically like one speck of light that kind of undulates and changes and spins, and it does all these certain things, but it doesn't explode the way that a firework does. So we were looking at a couple of stars, and these stars are like beautiful. We're looking at Arcturus, which is a planet that I'm very much connected to. And I think I briefly mentioned my experience once with seeing an Arcturian ship and feeling that connection with my brothers and sisters of the cosmos. And that was an incredible, incredible day. And that is yet a story I need to tell. So we're looking through at Arcturus, and Arcturus is very bright. It's very yellow and gold and orange and white, the colors are undulating and swirling within one another. And we look at another one, I'm not sure which one it was, and it was very blue and white and very cold colors. And then we come to another one that doesn't look familiar to me, and I spend a lot of time staring at the sky. And I mean, this is how I get many opportunities to see many crafts and many ships. And many other anomalous things. And so I spend an awful lot of time staring at the sky, whether with a telescope or without. And sometimes also on programs. And I highly recommend, I personally think the best program, even like way better than Google Earth and all that Google stuff. And especially considering they doctor out a lot of garbage the same way that NASA does. I would highly recommend Stellarium. I believe it's .org. So that's STELLARIUM, Stellarium. And it's amazing. And you can just go in and you can set it to like where you are. So I set ours to London, Ontario. So then it shows the sky at that moment that you're signed in, and because there's a live timer and that sort of thing. And then you can just search for Venus. You can search for Jupiter. You can search for Cassiopeia, or you can search for Mizar, which is a star in Ursa Major, in the Big Dipper. So, you can search for any celestial whatever, even if it's one of the ones that are just classified, as HR 1322 or something. And now that I said that, just very randomly, I'm gonna have to look that one up, because who knows what that could mean. HR 1322, I said. I just typed it down. So anyway, so we were looking at the sky, and I'm like, that one doesn't look familiar to me, because I do spend a lot of time sky gazing, whether it's in the daytime or the nighttime. As you can tell with the videos, with the hundreds and hundreds of freaking sun pictures that I take and moon pictures. And I have some really beautiful, brilliant moon pictures from last night that I took through the eyepiece. And even though it's a Dobsonian mount, and it tends to be avid, what would you call it? Avid telescopists tend to say that the Dobsonian mount is the hardest to take astrophotography. You can get away with it if you do it